For the insulation for the cat shelter, we have this Reflectix insulation. Which you can find in the insulation aisle at Home Depot or Lowe's. We have this Reflectix foil tape and all-weather duct tape and scissors. This comes in different sizes. You can get several different sizes. I don't remember the inches. I think it's 24 inches, maybe 36, and they have really huge rolls of this stuff. So of course, the bigger the roll, the cheaper it is per square foot. But I ended up getting all 3 different sizes, so that makes it kind of easier on me because I don't have to cut. You'll see it's almost the exact height that we need for these shelters. Obviously, if you buy the bigger stuff, you're going to have to cut it down a little bit. Just because we feel that the bottoms get colder for the cats, and we want the bottoms to be as warm for the cats as possible. So instead of doing 1 layer like we do on the sides, we're going to do 3 layers on the bottom. You can either pre-measure with measuring tape, or you can just set it in and see how much of it you need and mark it with scissors. We ended up pre-cutting for about 20 bins one day, and we had someone actually cut all the pieces to the exact size, which really helped out a lot if you're doing several of these like we did. So we had someone actually in charge and cut probably almost close to 100 of the perfect sizes that we needed. But for this one, I'm just going to eyeball it, and I'm going to cut the first one just with regular scissors. That's good, so we're going to do 2 more of these. I'm going to use the first one as a template. Sometimes you'll have scrap pieces. Be sure to keep those, don't throw them away, because you can use these. I think I'm going to use this last piece for the walls, just because I don't want to cut my last piece, because this is a perfect height for the walls. So I'm going to save this piece for the walls, and I'm going to take one of my larger pieces to do another piece on the bottom. We have our 3 pieces. We're going to set them on the bottom like that. But first, we're going to do the walls. Set that aside. You'll notice it overlaps quite a bit. You can either cut it down and use the scrap pieces, or on this one, I'm just going to leave it in because I have no use for the scrap pieces anymore. So it'll just be a little bit extra insulation on part of it. That's okay. But first, I need to get my Sharpie marker so I can mark the door opening. So where there's no seam, we want to press the insulation up against the door so that we can mark it. Lift up our flap, and I'm going to mark the square for the door. So before we tape it in, we want to be sure to cut that door out so it makes it a little easier. I'm going to fold it, do a little slit. That gives me a hole to stick my scissors in. Now when we cut the hole, you'll see the square there. But we actually want to cut bigger, because if you cut exactly on the square, the door is going to hit it, and it's not going to open and close very well. So as I cut, I'm going to go a little bit outside of that square. By, I don't know, maybe like 1/4 of an inch or so. Now, in order to get the door lined up and the pieces in without struggling, we do just some Scotch tape to kind of keep it in place. And that's just to hold it so it doesn't shift on you. So we're just going to take our Scotch tape and go around very quickly, just to hold it so it doesn't shift. You'll notice that you'll have big gaps around the sides like that. I'm going to do it a little bit tighter. It's okay to have the gaps because I'll show you how to get those a little bit tighter, but if you didn't have the gaps, what would happen is if you pull really tight, you'll notice that, because this is not a perfect square, that it starts to not line up on the tops. So in order to get it to line up on the tops, you have to push down, but that leaves gaps. So I'm going to show you how to tighten those gaps up in a minute. But for now, just tack it with some Scotch tape. Now we're putting the bottom pieces in. You'll notice these will be tighter once we get the side insulation in. That's okay. So you can leave it like that. That's fine. If you leave the gaps, it's not a big deal. Or if you decide that you do want these to be flush, we cut slits like that, and we take our scrap pieces like this and we slide them in just for some extra insulation. I'm going to do both just so you can see what both looks like. Okay, so that'll be one way of doing it. Okay, or you can just leave the gap like that. So we have extra pieces, so I'm going to go ahead and fill in our gaps with some extra pieces of insulation. But this is a process that you don't have to do. Okay. And then we have our foil tape. This is this.
The reflective paper backing on the foil tape sometimes is difficult to get off, especially if you don't have really sharp fingernail edges, or something thin that you can catch the point of it with. Slicing in the tape backing is hard to get off. Another kind of tape. Keep in mind the reflective foil tape does become just like sharp tinfoil edges after you pull that tape backing off, so be careful not to slide your finger on the edge and get a foil cut, like shaper cut. Apparently the cats decided to come help after terrorizing the kitchen cabinet.
So here's one side that I did to make it flush, and here's the side I did not do to make it flush. So that's up to you.
Sealing it just like you guys just saw it and heard it. Sometimes it works really easily and sometimes it takes a long time to get. Give this piece longer, so I keep that split. We could have made it cleaning faster. That's not even that. So if you're editing it out, I'm not sure why you said that to me.
Duct tape. You'll see the insulation around the doors. You don't want that rough edge like that. So we're going to take the duct tape, because I would imagine that eventually that would start to separate. This is really the only thing you need duct tape for. So if you didn't have duct tape, you could just use the silver tape, foil tape as well.
Can you also just use the foil tape around that doorway?
Yes, we can. Absolutely. But I like the way the duct tape looks better.
I like the way the foil tape looks.
Cut. If you were a cat and you were walking down the street, please don't create more edits for me to do. This is just one to get it. You gotta use the other scissors. Eating my chapstick.